first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is really a remarkable achievement. And I have to ask, for instance, you were there so many years ago. Is the film that we just watched, was that in any way the film that you thought you were making?
I had no idea what we were doing. I just like to be there. When I first went down there, I was 25. And I had made 2 pictures with Peter and Paulie, Peter Bogdanovich and Paulie Platt. And we just finished the last picture show. And Paulie got this call from Orson saying, I'm doing a movie down here in Carefree, Arizona. Why don't you come down and help me? And she said, okay, can I bring somebody? And he said, sure. And so she took me, and it was, the start of this, 40 whatever year journey. And I didn't question anything. I mean, that first time we were there, we didn't have a script. We were shooting the movie within the movie, and there were only 6 of us there. Gary Graber, Orson, Oya, Polly, and a couple of other friends of Gary's. And we were shooting the movie within the movie. So we were doing all these crazy sort of visual effects within the camera. That those shots at the end of the feature, where Oya is walking on this, it looks on this sort of black volcanic landscape. Well, that's a foreground miniature that we built, and then we put her on that bread truck that you see in our little short dog walking on this thing. I had no idea what we were doing. And then finally he let me look through the camera, and I went, oh, that's what we're doing. So it was a real learning experience for me. But, I got an idea as we went on for 4 or 5 years making the movie, kind of what it was about. It was kind of a satire of Hollywood, but it was just fascinating. I have no idea how he kept this all in his head.
Well, presumably some of it was put down for official record because you had some things that you guys were working with to kind of gauge what he was going for, not just the footage.
There were plenty of scripts. I mean, there were treatments and 5 linear
He just never let us read them.
Yeah.
I mean, but so much of this film's, so much of its lifeblood is the energy that's put into the editing. And I'm curious how much that was actually evident from the way that it was written in the script, the notes that you might have read, any kind of input that you got from the work print. What were some of the ways in which you could sort of navigate the style that he wanted this film to feel like?
Well, Orson had cut about 40 minutes of material. And from that 40 minutes, we pretty much knew the style of the editing that he was trying to achieve. It was mostly, he had actually mostly edited the film within the film material, which was surprising because in the script it's very incidental. It's just supposed to illustrate the movie that Jake Hannaford was making. But I think when Orson started to shoot it, he really enjoyed shooting that stuff. And he was partners with Oya Kodar, and I think that was her main interest when they were making the movie together. So there was a mountain of that beautiful 35 millimeter color footage of the film within the film. And that's also the footage that he primarily edited. Then there were a few of the party scenes that he had cut. He had cut the arrival of Jake Hannaford arriving at the party, and it was cut in the style of being presented from all the different cameramen shooting at the same time. But aside from that, so that it's probably about 30 minutes of the movie were actually edited by Orson. 30% of the movie. And then the rest of it was like really rough assemblies, but so we knew from what he had actually fine cut, what his intentions were. And that was sort of our starting point.
Tell us a little bit about how the story evolved between when you first started making it and when the photography was basically done. I mean, there's a lot of things in here that are autobiographical. There's a lot of things that are reflecting very real challenges that he was facing in the industry. But from the starting point to when he put the cameras down, I'm sure there was a lot of sort of evolution just in terms of how it was reflecting those years as well.
The scripts didn't really change from 70 to 74. Scripts stayed pretty consistent. I mean, reassign certain dialogue from character to character. In '75, he continued shooting a lot of it at Peter Bogdanovich's house, and those were called the LA pages, which, were these kind of disjointed scenes. We weren't quite sure where some of them fit in, so that was...
Yeah, a lot of them were just little pieces that would go here and there throughout the course. It was almost like a pickup shoot. Like, you would go and shoot pickups, but he was shooting little bits of dialogue that would go here and there to clarify things. With
a reversal of something that we weren't quite sure was on the other side sometimes, or he didn't shoot it, so we had to figure out, if we could make something cohesive from the bits and parts that we had. So it was a lot of just Bob moving stuff around.
Yeah, and everything was shot so piecemeal. I mean, he would shoot with whatever actors he had. So if he had 2 out of 3 actors in the scene, he would shoot with those 2 actors and then shoot the other actor a couple of years later. So, for instance, everything with the Lily Palmer character, Zara Valeska, the older female actor, was all shot in Spain a couple of years after the fact, and she's all throughout the movie. She's at the party, she's at the drive-in, but that was all shot in Spain. And actually it works really well.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing, that scene at the end in the drive-in when John Huston leans in the car and talks to her, it's like they're there talking to each other.
But yeah, and then the scene where he's speaking, talking to Peter, they weren't together because it was originally shot with Rich Little playing the part. So yeah, I mean, it's just a real testament to Orson's skill as a director to be able to make you think that these actors are actually acting together and creating this emotional moment when they were years apart and hundreds of miles away.
Yeah, we think that the big pink lobster scene, I think that's probably shot over the course of 3 or 4 years, and who knows how many different locations. So,
I'm actually in that scene.
Yeah.
You mentioned Rich Little, and this is one of the major changes in the film, right? That Rich Little doesn't finish the role, so they go back and have Bogdanovich do that character instead of another character that he was playing. And that, of course, cements a little bit more of the sort of personal connection in terms of Orson and the character that John Huston is playing. Tell us a little bit about some of the influences that you sort of felt from his real life at that time that really enriched the script. Maybe just his relationship to filmmaking at that time.
Well, I mean, it really shows his frustration as somebody who, even though he was only in his mid-50s, he had been totally marginalized by Hollywood. He had gone to Europe after the disaster of Magnificent Ambersons, and then came back and made another incredible movie, Touch of Evil, for Universal. And then that was problematic and was not a hit, and it was taken away from him. So he went back to Europe again and made several more movies, Othello, The Trial, a few others. And then this was supposed to be his big comeback movie, and like the Jake Hannaford character, he's unable to get money to complete the movie. Nobody takes him seriously, and it's a very frustrating process for him. So it's a real reflection of that.
And we were trying to get money through that whole period from 1970 to 1976, and even in 1975, the AFI gave him Lifetime Achievement Award. And Orson cut together 3 sequences, I think, which are all in the movie now. And there was this big gala event at the Century Plaza Hotel, which I see is not there anymore, by the way. But all of Hollywood was there. Every studio was there. Frank Sinatra was the host. Orson made this wonderful speech. We showed the clips. It was, obviously trying to sell it. Not one phone call the next day. Nobody would take the risk. Nobody wanted to help us. It was amazing.
I mean, Orson was 55 in 70 when he started this picture. I mean, he should have been really at the peak of his career. And this is something that Peter talks about often. He says that that Peter was talking about how John Ford couldn't get a directing gig, and Orson was really upset about that. He said, "You know what? It's that the creativity is at its peak at your youngest, and then at your oldest, and so what a shame that was." And so a lot of that, kind of the Hannaford, the frustrations that he faces, is something that Orson felt was. It was taken away from these masters in their old age. They weren't given the opportunity to make the movies, and they still had stories to tell.
Ruth, you must have had just an enormous variety of complicated things to solve.
I think she described it the best, saying it was a scavenger hunt. Because when I brought Ruth on, what?
2014.
Yeah, she started working on this in 2014 when we knew nothing. We hadn't gotten in the vault yet. I knew that we needed someone like Ruth who could sort of be our godmother to shepherd everything along in this journey that we were on that was like a big puzzle that we just didn't know what we were up against. So she's really good at handling those fastballs and those curveballs.
It was really a process of discovery all the way through. We never knew what we were going to have. And it was fascinating. I mean, the nice thing is there was never a shortage of people that would work on it. You know, everybody was passionate about this project. Anybody that we asked was happy to work on it. And when we got the boxes back from LTC and opened them up, it was terrifying because there was about 1,100 cans of film, and it smelled like
And Ruth
vinegar.
in a hazmat suit. Opening up.
Alyssa and I, yeah, basically with the masks and but it was so exciting. It was like this Christmas present we were opening, you know. And I remember when we got it back at Technicolor.
All those people.
We were all in tears because we didn't know if we were going to get it, for one thing. We tried for a couple of years to get it back, and then when it came, it was like, okay, it's here, you know, and we were so excited. And then we brought Bob in, and then it really got going, you know. Then we started tearing into it, and we had to figure out how to do things as we went, you know. The video gorillas, like matching picture to picture, we could have never done that quickly without that technology.
And
The
the
sound
negative cutting,
technology.
right? That were, you know, and in terms of bringing Mo on, you made two approaches to Mo.
Yeah, I wanted
Before
Mo
we-
right away. Mo's
before we
the
could
best, and I
engage
used
her.
her.
And she
for
kept
years.
turning down the job.
Well, there was only one. She was the only one. Everybody else wanted to work on it, but she came in, and thank God she did. And you know, then the sound. If we would have tried to make this film even 5 years earlier, it wouldn't have been the same film, because we had technology. There were new sound technologies that really assisted us in getting the best sound. You know, that taking some of that old mag.
Yeah, we had to set up a whole film editing room
A few
with
years
flatbacks and
earlier.
benches and rewinds and synchronizers just to go through the work track, because that was our source of the sound.
It would have never been as pristine.
And it
but-
sounded bad, you know.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of interesting. We talked about it a lot on the show that you know, it happened when it should have happened, just a few years earlier, and it wouldn't have been the movie that it is now. And you know, I saw Frank in Telluride, and we were just talking out the door about how many times we've seen this film, and every time I see it, I see something new, and it's bigger and better and more magical. I really, really think Orson was a genius. I really do.
Because, you know, several people say how ahead of its time this movie is. I'm curious about, Bob, maybe you can speak to this, the editing in the beginning. It's incredibly sophisticated. It's got this great rhythm to it. You're cutting between, you know, color, black and white, different aspect ratios, different scenes. You're cutting from the fake movie in the movie, and you're cutting to, you know, you're cutting to the documentary style of the sort of the film that brackets it. Would something like this have been particularly understood by the public back in, you know, 40 years ago, or is that a language that we've sort of caught up to?
In a way, I think, you know, the 70s were a time of experimentation in filmmaking, and it was sort of the new Hollywood thing was happening, and people were trying to push the boundaries. And I think Orson wanted to be at the forefront of all of that. I mean, he really saw the need to be the king of the innovators. as he had throughout his entire career, from when he was on stage, from when he was in radio, from Citizen Kane onward. So he really took that mantle and ran with it. And yeah, it is so far ahead of its time in terms of the sort of found footage aspect of it, and the idea that, you know, all these people have come to his party and have all brought their own cameras, the way people now sort of all bring their cell phones. And the feeling that there's no privacy anymore. You know, no matter where John Huston and Peter Bogdanovich go in that house, there's always somebody shooting. You know, and that's the way it is now, because like everybody has a camera and everybody's always under 100% surveillance at all times. So Orson was, you know, really ahead of the curve on that. I mean, just that whole attitude of that, you know, everybody has a camera and there's no privacy, and everything is a reality show. And he came up with that idea back in 1970, and now it's become commonplace. But I mean, it's so ahead of its time. And yeah, just, you know, the cutting was just. I mean, I remember when Gary first showed me some of those scenes. At first, I just thought it was a mess. You know, Gary Graver, the cinematographer, I was friends with him, and about 15 years ago, he showed me some of those scenes of like Jake's arrival at the party, and it was really hard to process. But you know, I think it's a real tribute to Orson when the footage was actually put together and finished in pristine form. You know, it actually plays really well. You know, it may have looked really hard to watch on a work print, but you know, now when you see the final product, it actually feels like it has a flow and feels like it actually has a style that works. So,
Was there a particular sequence in this film that was especially complicated or difficult to put together?
All of them.
yeah, really all of them, because of the piecemeal fashion, the fact that all the slates were cut off and things weren't even slated conventionally, the mixture of all the different formats, color, black and white, negative, reversal, 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter. Yeah, you name it.
Well, I know the stuff that Bob was most intimidated by, because it was he was last to attempt to cut it. It was the film within the film, the psychedelic club in the bathroom.
We kept hearing about this bathroom scene.
like, Bob, when are you going to edit the bathroom?
Didn't we hear that it was, we thought it was
Yeah.
somewhere, you went up there.
Well, yeah, I was in touch with the other editors who had worked on it previous to me. So there was a guy named Yves Deschamps in France who had worked on it with Orson in the mid-70s. And then there was a second guy who was working with Orson in the States called Steve Eckelstein. And so when I called him, he said, you know, Orson and I spent 6 months working on this bathroom scene. And we had 500 edits in the span of 3 minutes, and it was like looking at a motion picture version of a Picasso painting, because you were constantly seeing everything from many different perspectives. And we searched and searched and searched through these hundreds of boxes of print that we had. We never found the edited scene. So we always knew it was something that we had to confront at some point, and it turned out there was like
But it was also like
6 or 9 hours of footage.
Are you sure if it was 500 cuts, or could it have been 100?
Well,
Maybe it was 100.
No, but you know, we didn't know. But so I was so overwhelmed that
there was also 9 hours. Of
there was 9 hours of footage. So I ended up pawning it off on one of my guys, my friend Paul Hart, who had come on to actually run the film portion. You know, go through all the film and find things for us on film. And Paul's an editor, and I said, hey, if you want to stay late and come in on weekends or whatever, I would love it if you could put this bathroom scene together. So he actually did. He stayed a couple hours every night, and after like maybe 6 weeks, he had something that he had put together, and it was pretty much what you see, and it was great. So I mean, there were all these kind of things that we really, you know, knew that we had to have in the movie. And the nightclub scene is another example, because that had never been cut.
No,
Yeah.
and you put that together basically over the course of 1 weekend.
Yeah,
And with that
so
Blue Cheer song,
really
you
cool.
also
Yeah.
dropped it in as a temp track, and then
We
the
went,
moment
"Whoa,
we
what's
saw
that?"
it,
Yeah.
we're like, no,
We're
this
buying
is-
that one. But it also was, you know, when you see the scene in the screening room with the studio head, and he's talking about the doll and the package and everything, we never knew what that was.
Yeah, it all
until-
tied in. So.
Yeah, and then, this all tied together. So, it was kind of a treasure hunt, and we found a lot of gold along the way.
Let's talk a little bit about the film within the film, even just sort of from intention-wise. Yeah, obviously, there's some very explicit references to European art films shot next door to the Zabriskie Point House. And of course, this does feel very much like he's making sort of an Antonioni or Bergman film.
Kind of, but not really. I mean, when you actually go back and look at the Antonioni movies, it's really nothing like those. You know, just in terms of the editing style and a lot of the content. But
Orson was really having fun, I think.
yeah, I think he just kind of had that as a departure, but then kind of went and did his own thing, you know, and made it his own movie.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just curious to hear a little bit about your interpretations of his reflection of these kinds of movies.
I mean, there was a treatment for it. It was something that we found at the Cinémathèque Française. It was one of the first things he wrote, was a treatment for this thing, and then he deviated from it. Some of it he didn't shoot at all. I think, obviously the Robert Evans character, the studio head, makes fun of it. Says that it doesn't have a narrative quality to it. We attempted to put something together just of the film within the film, just to figure out if it did have a narrative arc, if we took 100% of what he shot, and it really didn't.
Yeah, because he was really just trying to shoot material to support the main story.
Yeah.
So,
But it was evident that he was having a lot of fun doing it, and that's something that I think it's well documented that it was freeing to him to be making a film under the guise of another director. So he's wearing a mask, and he has that great piece with Jean Moreau in the Morgan Neville documentary where he says, it's neither movie's my movie. One is a documentary, the other one is the filmmaker's film. So this was totally freeing, and that's why he was very kind of puritanical with his approach to sex. All of a sudden, enter Oya, being able to hide behind another filmmaker, and all of a sudden you get something like this. And some of the bathroom stuff was pretty raunchy.
yeah, it was racy, and then I think a lot of that stuff. I think Oya Kodar's contribution has to be mentioned because I think she went out and shot a lot of that stuff with Gary, and they sort of. Between her and Orson, they were sort of like the creative team making the movie within the movie and kind of trading off as the director a lot of times.
We should also give credit to Gary Graver.
Absolutely, yeah. Gary was there every step along the way and was, I think, the one guy who was probably there like every
Yeah, and he was not known as...
No, Gary was known as he shot hundreds of exploitation movies, like a lot of drive-in movies from the 70s. With titles like Satan Sadists and Dracula vs. Frankenstein and Toolbox Murders. And I mean, I was a big fan of his from all those pictures that he did. And then when I met Gary, I found out that he had this whole other side where he had shot this incredible Orson Welles movie and had basically worked with Orson Welles for 15 years shooting all of Orson's projects. And was this incredible creative cameraman who could come up with these beautiful images.
Working with nothing. I mean, we literally had nothing to work with. A couple of flags, a couple of stands, a couple of sun guns. I mean, you see me holding a sun gun. That was it. And when you see the movie, it's just incredible.
It really is, because it's gorgeous in every style that he's shooting in, which is incredibly versatile too. I mean, because there's the handheld stuff, there's obviously the film within the film. So that's an incredible testament to his work.
And it wasn't, none of that stuff was improvised. So when you see take after take, he was going for something. He was very exacting in the direction, and he needed to hit certain marks, and then yet to make it look loose and free like a documentary. But everything was 100% choreographed. So again, testament to his eye in control.
Obviously, I got fired a lot because of that. I walked into a shot because he kept the car going. I was out of the shot, but he kept going. Orson kept going, and I looked in the window.
So I'm guessing the character that keeps getting fired is loosely
I am
based on-
Zimmy in the movie.
Was Oya particularly involved in a creative fashion on this?
Yes, very much so.
What were some of the things that she suggested?
Well, I wouldn't say they were suggested, but she and Orson, she was like a co-creator of the script. She worked a lot with him on the script. She was obviously there on the set all the time. And the movie within the movie, I think she's very much responsible for.
And then during the post-production process, we showed the film to her when we were getting close to locking, and she had 3 notes which were like surgical, like exactly, she knew what they shot, where it was supposed to go. And so, in each case, I think that her suggestions really improved the film.
And what about Peter's involvement?
Oh, Peter was fully involved the whole way.
So tell us a bit about, because his relationship with Orson was so intimate for so long. Of course, he's a phenomenal filmmaker himself. What are some things that sort of came out through that collaboration? You guys working with Peter.
Well, it must have been surreal for him. I was always, looking at the screen and looking at Peter and then looking at the screen, not only seeing himself 40 years younger and giving that great performance.
He says he's watching it and he sees himself 30 years old as an actor, and he says, "Who's that guy? What happened
in his career?
Yeah,
What happened in his acting career?"
But just from our editing standpoint, Peter was sort of the stand-in for the director, when we were working. So, he knew Orson for so many years and was so close and really knew what his tastes were. And, sort of typical of the director when we were cutting the movie, and he came up with some great ideas like the voiceover at the beginning and ideas for, the sequencing of some of the scenes. He had remembered seeing some of the footage. One day he said to me, there's this great shot of Oya shooting the gun where all the smoke is coming around her, and when Orson showed it to me originally, I couldn't figure out how they did it because it's so beautiful, and I hadn't seen the shot at that point, and so we went back through all the footage and found that great shot. But so Peter actually was very instrumental in the final product.
I'm stunned by just how uncanny it is to hear Danny Houston doing the ADR. Tell us a little bit about that process, because it seems like there was an incredible amount of sophisticated work on the sound.
You want to talk about that, Ruth?
Go ahead.
Danny?
Well, just the sound in general. What we had to deal with.
Well, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work, but Danny was amazing. He was the star of the show. He came in and he sounded so much like his father, and he had mannerisms, and he really embodied, I think, the main character. So once we had that, that was really kind of the bedrock of all the sound of the ADR, and we found great voice alikes. We used it sparsely. They were really smart about keeping as much of the original sound as they could, and blending and matching. And yeah, I think it worked. I think it kept the feeling of the original actors, and just improved upon it. So we were really lucky that way.
Yeah, it was really the hard work of our sound crew and all the technology that didn't even exist 6 months ago. They were using like beta versions of a lot of these programs that were like forensic level programs to clean up really bad sound and get rid of noise and hum and camera noise and all this kind of stuff that probably couldn't have been done a year ago. And even though we recorded a lot of ADR, I think probably 95% or more of the dialogue in the movie is actually the original production sound. So it was used very, very sparingly and surgically.
Frank, I think it was in the doc you mentioned that working on this film taught you how to be a producer. Tell us lessons learned, both good and bad.
Well, I think the biggest lesson that I learned, and it's kind of obvious, but never give up. Orson never gave up. We never gave up. And here we are tonight. So no matter what the challenge is, and you get lucky along the way. To have Danny Houston be the one guy that's here that could help us, and he's an actor and he can do his dad's voice, that is the most important character in the movie. So,
and to be able to get Michel Legrand, who Orson had hired back in 1975, and even though he's almost 90 years old, for him to still be at the top of his game and have more energy than any of us have, and then do the score, it was just another really lucky thing.
Well, I think Ruth said it in the doc that, it was kind of meant to be that we kept hitting these hurdles Ruth waited 4 years until she finally got to see the negative, but she kept taking other jobs and calling me and coming back, and and then we had another editor on hold, but he had to take another job, and then we found Bob. So all those things, just keep going, never give up.
Yeah, Orson Welles had a famous saying. He said he prefers people who rock the boat to people who jump out. So, never jump out. Just keep going, man.
Well, he also said that he likes those little accidents that happen along the way, and I saw a whole lot of them in the movie. He said, those are the interesting things.
Divine accident.
Yeah, divine accidents, he called them. And I learned about those, but I didn't know at the time that I was kind of starting to be a producer. I just did everything I could do to help him and Peter when I was on the movies with him to realize their vision.
Filip, you were telling me earlier that the elements of this that are a parody of the industry of these sort of larger than life characters, that it's nuanced enough that it can be read not necessarily as parody, and I think that's an interesting thing because it goes to tone. Tell us a little bit about what you set out to achieve in terms of how these characters were going to come across and what responses you've gotten from audiences.
Well, yeah, because it's obviously the Hannaford character and that level of misogyny, and and we're not in nuanced times, right? So it's interesting how the film would have been interpreted then versus how it's interpreted now. When you talk about because Orson and one of the first the first inklings, kind of the first spark was his run-in with Hemingway, whom he found, and he had some type of homophobic remark to Orson because he was supposed to do a voiceover narration for a film about the Spanish Civil War, some documentary, and Orson came in, and Hemingway regarded him as this queer working on the stage, and so he made some remark to him that really pissed Orson off, and so he started hamming it up. And then Hemingway threw a chair at him, and then they got into a fist fight, or so legend has it.
And then they became great
And then they became great friends. And so with Orson, he always, he said that the film was about the death of the American macho, and that behind these bigger than life macho guys, there's something latent, and so and then the same thing with the whole John Ford aspect about the older filmmaker who couldn't get a job. So, kind of he combined all these things to make this, kind of bigger than life, mythologized, and obviously misogynist character. But obviously the film doesn't celebrate him, but Orson in a way that, he's not going to tell you what to think. You have to arrive at your own conclusions as to what he's doing. He's just kind of presenting you with everything, and then you kind of figure it out. So, it's very interesting the times that we find ourselves in now, and I think that the reception of the film would have been way different in the 70s. I don't think this thing would have been as big of a point of conversation as it is now, and should be now. So, yeah. And obviously the movie is un-PC across the board. It's equal opportunity offensive.
All right, let's widen this conversation to the audience. Yes.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to see Orson in the hologram Q&A section. Bob, could you tell me what percentage is your edit and his in the sex car scene? And could you talk about in flatbed editing, there's a wait time when you're rewinding where the editor can think. In the digital editing world, there's no wait time. You have immediate access. Can you talk about that? Did you ever flatbed edit?
Yes, I did. My background was in film, so I got my first few features, on film, on moviolas, flatbeds, the whole deal. And, went into the digital thing early, and every time I thought I missed working on film and I actually went back and started working on film again, I realized how difficult it was and what a time-consuming process, and just trying to find the extension of that shot and spending 20 minutes and finding that it's just a flash frame. So it's easy to get nostalgic about it, but I really do think digital's a much better way to work. I don't agree with digital photography, and I love to see movies projected on film, and we actually made 35mm prints of this movie. And I hope you guys get a chance to see it, because film is better than any of this digital photography garbage that people are trying to push on everybody. But yeah, the whole thing about like having time to think, there's plenty of time to think, when you're working. I still work as many hours as I do. I'm still there till after midnight every night, and the thought process is always happening, and it's just there's less like busy work, working on digitally. And we went back on film, had film on this movie, and I was reminded of like how tedious a lot of it was. But it was great to see.
And then the sex.
The sex scene in the car. So that was one of the scenes that Orson had presented for his AFI tribute, and had edited that scene. Believe it or not, that was
Maybe that was the reason.
Yeah, maybe it was. I mean, it's a pretty racy scene, and his version was actually a little longer. It was, I think, a couple of minutes longer. But when we saw it and we put it into the body of the movie, we realized that it felt out of proportion with the, I think when you cut a scene and have it exist in its individual state, you get a different feeling. But when you see it within the context of the movie, we actually thought that it needed to be a little shorter and tighter, and we did that with all of Orson's scenes, just because, we also knew that he had cut those scenes as show reels, more like sizzle pieces, and really wanted to make them seem like short films, but knowing the way he always edited, that he would have cut anything down, because he was very heavy-handed in the editing room,
And it was before it was connected to.
Yeah, so we had to
room.
create transitions in and out of the scene that may have not existed. So we knew we had to take those liberties, and we knew he would have, because Orson always said in the editing room he was the enemy of the film, and always wanted to keep cutting shorter and shorter and shorter, because he was always afraid of boring the audience. So we did it.
That scene was really extraordinary.
It really is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love
it's
his use of
correct.
color.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and that was shot over and on several different continents as well. It was shot in Paris. It was shot in Peter's driveway in Beverly Hills, and with a lot of the scenes.
Yes. Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Graham Edmonds. I'm a student at USC. I'm in the Trojan Actors Film and Television Club, and one of the things we've been talking about is sort of seamlessly transitioning into characters. When I was watching the film, the dialogue is so sort of authentic and very kind of gregarious and conversational. And you talked about how in the featurette it's a very dialogue-driven film. And so I wonder how much of that dialogue was all scripted, or if the actors, I guess, might go back to the original
100%
set.
scripted. Yeah. I mean, apparently Orson had a typewriter on the set. We'd still be writing pages, but everything was scripted. He would hand pages to the actors, and they would do it.
Yeah, even that stuff, that kind of zany stuff during the fireworks with Bogdanovich and Norman Foster. I mean, to me, that felt like it was improvised. And then we asked Peter. Peter said, "Nope, all scripted." Then we went back just to be 100% sure. Went back to the script.
Yeah.
It was all there.
Sure enough, there was a version that had all that Reagan stuff in it and everything else, which seems like this goofy improv kind of thing, but it was all scripted.
You mentioned a few people who had worked on the movie at the time, like yourself, Mr. Marshall, Peter Bogdanovich, Oya Kodar, and the editors. Were there other surviving members of the cast and crew that you consulted with to find out, okay, how did Orson want this scene to play, or how did Orson want this section to look?
We had Joe McBride.
Joe McBride and Peter Jason, who was the character actor. Joe McBride, Larry Jackson, Neil Canton, were all sort of part of. Neil came with me. I asked Neil to come down right after What's Up, Doc, and he was sort of a PA in part. But you were never one job on the movie. You did everything. So everybody's in the movie. Everybody's working on the movie. But really the essential people that were on the creative side are really Peter and I that are left.
And there was a little bit, in terms of the French component, some of the producers.
Yeah.
Dominique Antoine at that point. I mean, she really put together part of the Persian financing for it. She was the person in those years in the late 70s was still trying to make amends between Orson and one of the financiers, but also she corresponded with him a lot. And there's hundreds of pages of memos between them, and some of them speak to the editing. So Dominique was a great resource for me as I was trying to figure out some of the rights, and then she was the one who I believe introduced me to Yves Deschamps, and who was very helpful to Bob, and he was one of the editors who at that point was in his early 20s when Orson hired him in the early 70s.
Well, and I'd say Joe McBride became a very well-known and respected film historian. So he's written a lot about Orson, and he had a lot of dialogue with Orson through the movie. So Joe was an advisor on the film as well.
He played the kind of nerdy character Pister.
He always wrote on his hand,
Yeah.
which he did.
With the tape recorder and the microphone.
Right.
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. It's the first time I saw an Orson Welles film on the big screen. So my question is to Frank. Frank, you have worked with some of the greatest filmmakers on extraordinary films over the years. You have seen the industry transform so much. You have seen many filmmakers come and change the industry. So what's your advice to an aspiring filmmaker now? Where do you think the next Spielberg or Orson Welles is coming from?
I wish I knew.
Right here, right?
Probably right here. You just have to do it. I know it sounds silly, but there's no path. Watch movies, learn from the past. I mean, there's great, the film language that has been developed over 100 years is very particular, and a lot of the directors that I have worked with push those boundaries in a lot of different ways, but we're all storytellers. So I would say make a good little movie, and you will be found.
Yes.
So I read that, well, first of all, thank you guys all so much. I read that the last shot was supposed to be Hannaford's car crashing through the movie screen, but that was never shot. Is that?
No, urban legend. There are a lot of urban legends on this one. But no, that was, I'm very proud of the fact that we did not shoot anything. We didn't have to, it's an amazing thing. I never remember, because I wasn't there a lot over the 6 years of scenes that we shot, but I couldn't believe we had everything to fit with the script. But we did do some visual effects things. We had to put the movie on the screens, and we had to do that at the drive-in and in the screening rooms, and we had to shoot the dummies. But essentially, we never did, we couldn't do any shots because nobody's here. So
Orson's too intelligent of a filmmaker to start the movie with the first thing you see is the crashed car, and end with the crash, and you already know what happens. Right, so in the script, it just it's the sun washes out.
Yeah, it was very, very specific of how the last shot was supposed to be laid out with the image fading off the screen as the sun.
As Oya drives off, it's amazing now that you can see it. When we had the work print, you couldn't ever see it, but the sun is coming up in the back.
It's like sunspots that you see.
And the reverse is then the sun wipes the screen clean as it comes up.
And then
Just like it was written.
Shoot him dead.
Shoot him dead.
I'm glad.
Now that Other Side of the Wind is done, is anybody going to take on Don Quixote?
I think Philip is.
Not anybody else sitting up here.
None of us do.
I think Just Franco already ruined that.
Yes.
I was just wondering what Orson Welles and John Huston's relationship was like before the film, because they started directing at the same time, and they had such.
They were great friends. They would sit and talk and laugh and drink into the night. It was an extraordinary relationship, and I do feel that they saw a lot of each other in each other, but they were incredible friends.
recommend watching the Morgan Neville documentary, the companion documentary to this, because that does go in depth, and there's quite a few. There's some nice testimony from John's, I think, fifth wife, Celeste, who was on set for a bit of it, and she has some great things to say. And Oya was really kind of taken with John and the love that they had and the trust, because obviously this is the character. This is a tough role to play. And for him to kind of let Orson do that, you have the utmost trust in that director. So pretty incredible. And I think she said that they were both rapscallions. I just love that word.
It's called They'll Love Me When I'm Dead.
Yeah, it will be released at the same time as the movie on November 2nd. You can find it on Netflix.
Yeah, is there an actual full narrative to the other side of the wind, like within the movie? Like, do we see it in a specific point? Is there just, there's even a whole section where they say, oh, it doesn't matter, the real. So is there like a narrative in the actual movie at all? Or maybe notes?
I mean,
there was a treatment.
There is in the treatment.
Yeah,
I mean,
but you never really shot
at some point, I think the Oya character kidnaps a couple. She's supposed to be some type of revolutionary, but really, I mean, Orson only shot bits and pieces, and obviously it starts with the steam bath, and the steam bath, there was supposed to be a much bigger shoot. What we found were just little snippets here and there.
Well, and one day they called me over to the cutting room and said, we found this incredible footage. And I went in, and there I was, and it was this scene where Oya kidnaps a couple, and it was Polly and me in the back of this car, and she was there with the scissors. It was like, I don't even remember it. I think I blocked it, probably.
It didn't look like any of the other stuff in the film. It was black and white.
And Frank was in his underwear.
Yes.
You had to tell.
Since some of the obviously some of the characters echo a lot of real relationships, was there inspiration to the male actor from the movie he was making?
You mean John Dale?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think
I wasn't there for the casting, so I don't know. I mean, he's certainly somebody that the camera likes. So.
No, I didn't mean specifically him, the actor, but the character, if that reflected something that you know of from his career.
No.
Yes.
So you mentioned Netflix, that it'll be on Netflix. And one of the things that's striking is how much sort of indie work had to go into getting the thing ready. What's then the role of Netflix is coming in as your distributor? When do they show up? Other than getting it out there, so everyone
We're only here tonight
Yeah.
because of Netflix.
Yeah.
We should give big kudos and applause to Netflix. They stepped up. They never wavered. They supported us all the way.
From
They
like
made
the
it.
2014 time to now?
No, I think it was 2015 when they offered a term sheet. Basically, then they said, yes, we want to do this. Not only this film, but then the Morgan Neville documentary, and then the short doc that you just saw. So it was.
And they didn't know. We hadn't gone in the vault yet. They didn't know whether the negative was okay.
Well, we had
You
inventory.
had done an
Yeah.
inventory, but we didn't know what was there.
We had an idea, because really nobody knew how much Orson shot. Orson kept secrets. Nobody was trusted enough to entrust with all the information. And so, we weren't quite sure how many hours of footage there were. But Netflix did trust us, complicitly and implicitly. And so it was, more or less where I think maybe 6 months into the edit was the first time that we kind of showed them a little bit of material.
And they had zero notes, zero creative notes, unlike any other studio in town who bombards you with editing notes. They had zero, actually zero.
They asked us to do a budget, so we did a low budget. We had no idea, and then we'd find we didn't have the sound, or we'd find we didn't have this or that, and we'd call them and say, well, here's what we need, and they go, okay, as long as you need it, go for it.
They said we bought an old house, and these are old house problems. It's a very good approach. So extremely supportive, and as Frank said, we wouldn't be here because the approach always was, we don't want to cut any corners. We really want to do this way, and work with the best people, and we were allowed to do that.
Well, was going to say, one of the things that Ruth said, we had Visto back then, the volunteers in service to Orson Welles. We have them now, too, because people would just call and say, how can I help? Can I work on Scott Milan has won, 5 Oscars, and he called me and said, I want to do this movie. You're doing the movie over here. And just people came out of the woodwork. It was really fabulous.
Yes.
Just incredible. I'm blown away by the beauty of what I saw. So thank you for that. And my question is, you were left with all this footage. I mean, that hasn't been used. These Margaret tapes and the voice of Orson. Have you ever considered giving that any life?
I think we'll do some type of fixed media release. Obviously, we're going to have to wait until a certain window, and I've had those conversations with Netflix about doing some type of Blu-ray or UHD kind of release. I think, and these were things where we've been putting together that we have. I mean, Bob is a lot of the stuff with Dennis Hopper.
Each of those filmmakers, there's like an hour and a half or 2 hours of interview with them, which is incredible.
So we have this really rich asset base, and we'd love to put it together in one place and just have some type of collector's edition of it. So it's eventually, we can't say when because we don't know, but it's the conversations that we've had. They've again been very supportive of it, the same way that we have this 35mm print, which was we always liked it philosophically, thinking this would be really special if people got to see it the way it was in the 70s. So I think certain people still want the fixed media version of it. So we'll eventually have that available.
All right, let's take one last one. Oh, I'll take 2. You and then you.
Why was Rich Little replaced?
Pardon me?
Why was Rich Little replaced?
Well, there's several theories. I'll give you mine because I was there. We had shot for 3 weeks with Rich Little, and on the last night that we were shooting, we had built a set at the Dick Van Dyke Studios, which for some reason was also in Carefree, Arizona, and we had like 100 extras coming, and Rich Little left town that day, and we couldn't shoot. And Orson was obviously very angry because we didn't have a lot of money, and we were done that night, supposedly. And it was pretty depressing for about a week. And he and Peter tells the story much better than I do, but I'll give it a shot. Peter called him just to check in because Peter was playing another character in the movie, and he called him to check in and he said, "How are you doing?" And Orson said, "Terrible." Why? Well, Rich Little left. He said, "Oh, what are you going to do?" And he said, "I don't know." And Peter said, "Well, why don't I play him?" And Orson said, "Well, I never thought of that." And Peter said, "You didn't? A young, successful director who's made 3 hit movies and does imitations? You never thought of that?" And Orson said, "Well, what about that other part that you're doing?" He said, "Well, that's a little part. You can replace me in that one." And Orson said, "Well, would you do it?" And Peter said, "Of course." And he said, "Can you come down?" And he said, "Yeah, I can be there tomorrow." And we started shooting again a week later. And that's the other incredible thing. Then we reshot all of Rich Little's stuff, only Rich Little's side. Now that I think about it, I know how hard this is. So there again was the genius of Orson. But Rich has another version.
And it would have been a very, very different performance and a very different film. So I mean, we would look at that, and a lot of it is also in Morgan Neville's documentary, because there's a whole little chapter about the Rich Little experience. Also
Rashomon.
But it's interesting when you see the footage from the original shoots back in 1970. Everything is a lot more broad. I mean, the part that's Peter's playing is this really goofy, over-the-top Jerry Lewis type character. Rich Little's part is a lot less serious than the way Peter played it. And I think it would have just been a more farcical movie. When And maybe that's what Orson was thinking originally, but the more he shot, he started to make it more and more serious and more real in terms of the
And
relationship.
that relationship between Peter and John Huston
It's devastating.
It is incredible. Yeah, sad and complex, and you know, I mean,
Yes.
I'm very overwhelmed. I don't know if Frank remembers me. I worked with him with Peter Bogdanovich. And after I left, because I had a baby, Peter called me and said, please come to my house. I need someone to type something very, very confidential. And that was the beginning of 4 years of working for Orson. And I know all these stories. I was in the bathroom scene.
oh my God.
But I mean, I know the entire story. I have copies of everything. I have all the letters between the producers and all the people involved. And I dug it all up. I moved a few years ago, and I dug it all out. I have all these things, and I didn't even think to get in touch with you guys once I found it. But thank you. It's wonderful.
Well, we love your email address. What's your name?
Terry, it was Terry Putz. It's Terry Chisholm now.
Hi, Terry. Yes, I remember you, of course.
Yeah,
Hi.
we sat opposite each other.
Right.
And they played all these trivia games all day long, and I didn't know anything. And I just laughed at them and made fun of them. But a lot of good memories.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. The 35 millimeter print, is that going to be playing commercially or only for special occasions? Like on November 2nd, is there a specific theater we can steer people to?
It's only going to be limited, so it'll be something that will be kind of more of a Q&A event. So we actually haven't seen the kind of full rollout, because at this point we're all going to be kind of traveling with it until launch. So kind of, back to being little factions around the world as we unveil this film, but it'll be more limited.
But just know that any theater that still plays film, we're going to make sure that they play it on film in 35 millimeters. So if it plays at the Egyptian or the Arrow or places like that still run film, or some of the arc lights.
Yeah, I think we're playing at the Arrow sometime.
Yeah.
On the 16th.
And they're actually making a few more prints. There's one print right now, and I think they're going to make 3 or 4 more. So.
I'm sorry we didn't run it in 35 tonight.
Well, I think it's in New York right now. We
actually it played today.
We requested it for you guys, but right now there's only one print. It's in New York. It's coming back. So, unfortunately.
Well, we'll just have to see.
I actually tried to.
We believe the Arrow will have 35.
Yeah.
My house.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful on film.
Thank you all so much for making this happen.